screen share now?
So, we have Valerie with us, Valerie McLean. It's simply what? Valerie, would you like to take over, please?
Sure thing, yeah, I can do that.
It's all yours.
Lovely. Let me just share my screen and we can get going. Thank you all for coming out today. Right, what are we doing? I want to share desktop too. Tell me if you can see this. You should be able to now see a nice orange screen. Can we see that? Thank you. So thank you for coming out today, this evening, this morning, wherever you are in the world. It's lovely to be chatting with you this morning. I'm going to share my talk, my session that I've been working on and presenting in various different forms over the past year or so. It's simply not that simple. Navigating complexity with curiosity and collaboration. So my name is Valerie. I'm an independent agility coach and I am based in Scotland. Hopefully the accent is okay for some of you who aren't used to a Scottish accent. I live in the central belt of Scotland and I would, if it wasn't dark outside, be able to see some beautiful hills just out the window. So I'm here today to talk to you about complexity, about curiosity and about collaboration. I'm a bit of a geek about human behaviour, about complexity and about systems. And I've been on a journey these past few years to try and find ways to help us lead more easily through that complexity and uncertainty that we're all facing at the moment. Some people who I think may be on the call saw this this at a very, very early stage, maybe about a year or so ago. If you've seen this talk before, I have some hot off the press updates this week, and you will be the first people to hear them. But the talk has changed, and the model that I'm going to share with you has changed over the course of the year, and I imagine it's going to keep changing. So I welcome your feedback. Connect with me, chat with me, tell me what you think, tell me what you don't like, tell me what you do like, tell me what's useful and what's not. I'm a sponge. I want to keep it all. So I am going to share a loop that I've made with you. It's a leadership loop.
Valerie, this is Suruchi.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I think
Okay.
we are unable to see your slides. We can see your
You can't see them.
we can see notes parts.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's
Oh
not what
yeah,
you
I
should
just
be.
realized as well. We're actually seeing the wrong screen.
Oh, thank you for telling me. Let me try again.
I thought it was all good because you shared.
Valerie, you may want to run the presentation in the presentation mode so that we can see the main presentation screen.
Okay, what can you see right now?
Orange and blue and
Orange,
red and
blue
pink.
screen.
Right, so this should work. What can you see now?
Yeah.
Can you see my notes
Cool.
now?
Yep. Here you
McLean loop.
McLean loop.
you're
You
on.
can see it right now.
Yep.
Now it works.
Oh, thank you so much for telling me, Suruchi. Thank you.
No worries.
I appreciate that. All right, so you don't really want to see my notes. That's not really very interesting. This is more interesting. So I'm going to share the McLean loop with you. I've named it after myself. I'm trying to own it. I'm trying to be confident. This is a sneak peek of it. We'll get into the detail of it later. So what are we going to learn about today? So I'm going to give you some context around some of the anti-patterns that we see and why our brains aren't helping us to turn those into helpful patterns. I'll give you my views on how agility can help. I'll give you a leadership model that will guide you. And the reason that I'm doing all of this is that I think that we're asked to do a lot of things, and we're asked to do lots and lots more things, and that just keeps growing and keeps growing. Things are taking longer, results are getting less predictable, and I see a lot of people struggling with that. So that's what I'm trying to help with. So I'm going to tell you a story. The story is fictional, completely fictional, but it is based on patterns. It's patterns that I have noticed myself, patterns that I have realised are not just happening in the experiences that I've had, but in other stories that I've heard and conversations that I've had with other people. So it is not real, but you may see some things that you recognize that I've taken inspiration from. So I want to take us all back and imagine that we're all in the 1920s working in a factory making cars. So we're making one of the first mass-produced cars in the world. And in this factory, it's people from all over the world. We're all working together, and there's 50 different languages spoken amongst the people in the factory. So we can't speak to each other. There's no way for us to communicate except from maybe through hand signals. But that doesn't really matter because we don't need to speak to each other because we're all getting an input, doing something to that input, and then giving it away as an output. And every single time, the input is the same, the processing is the same, and the output is the same. It's repeatable, it's predictable. It's got a definitive answer. If I do this, I will make that. And that means that every single time we make the exact same car. And our company, Burns, they're able to take all of these cars, put them out into the market and sell them. And they're quite successful in selling these cars to the market. And over the years, Burns have a lot of success and they work in the same way. I call it command and control. And what I mean by that is that head office do the design, they do the specs, and they give instructions to the people who are doing the work. And then people buy the cars, the company makes money, and it works. It works. They were market leaders in many global markets. It worked for them, this, what I call command and control process. So if we fast forward around 80 years, and we're looking at now electric cars. Up to this point, we've been making petrol and diesel cars. So now we're trying to do something different in Burns. And at this point, we're about 5 years into planning and the resources of creating this electric car, our very first one to go to the market. And we think we'll be good to go in about 6 months. We did plan to have our car into the world about 2 years ago, but various things have happened, which has meant that that's been delayed. So we're hoping to be good to go in 6 months. We're doubling down on the control just to make sure. But then enter X. Brand new company. These people have never made a car before, but they come into the market with their very first car and it's an electric car. And that car is pretty successful, but Burns aren't really feeling that concerned about it. They've been making cars for decades. They've got a consumer base, which is, you know, across the world, they are successful. People want their cars. They're waiting for them to come out. So they're not feeling concerned about this X that's come onto the market. But just to be sure, they tighten up their control because they want to make sure that they get this right. So a few months later, we're ready to launch Burns' electric car into the market. And I wonder what happens. Oh dear, we've created a flop. The consumers that they're expecting to flood to the car dealerships to buy this car don't flood to the car dealerships. The journalists who normally write fantastic reviews about the Burns cars don't write fantastic reviews about this car. And in head office, they're going, what's happened? We don't understand. We know how to make cars. We've been making cars for decades. We're a market leader in making cars. And then the blame game starts to happen. Have our people lost their touch? Are our staff trying to sabotage us? Are the consumers being brainwashed? All of these questions start to go through the heads of people working in this organization. But the answer to all of those questions is no. Everybody in this organization was doing what they knew. They were doing what was comfortable for them. And this command and control process is all they know. It's all they've ever needed to know because it's always worked for them. If they've been more successful than what they were expecting, they had validation that they were doing the right thing. And if they were less successful than they were expecting, they thought, we need to tighten our control. We obviously didn't control that one as well as we should have. Now, I hate to break it to you, But the truth is that it's simply not that simple anymore. And this is a pattern. This isn't a real story, but there are patterns in there. I don't know if you recognize the feeling when you're unchallenged in your market or in your work. And then maybe a challenge or a threat comes in. And the behaviors that you have then are often the opposite of what you actually need to be doing in order to rise to that challenge. And I want to help us understand why. So the first thing I'm going to show to try to help us is this quote from Gary Hamel. So right now, your company has 21st century internet-enabled business processes, mid-20th century management processes, all built atop 19th century management principles. And I think that this is true for many of us. I don't think that we're all working in 19th century organizations or indeed 20th century organizations, but we can't get away from the fact that those principles and processes that have come in the decades and centuries before now hugely influence the organizations that we're all working in. And it's not just what's come before, it's what's coming up in the future as well. Nearly 70% of executives agree that their industry will change more in the next 5 years than it did in the previous 50. So there's acknowledgement that not only are we dealing with management principles and processes that aren't fit for an internet-enabled age, we're also dealing with a pace of change that is increasing and increasing more than we've ever seen. If you think about the automotive industry, we can't predict with accuracy what fuel cars will run on in 10 years' time. We have an idea. We think it's going to be electricity, but we don't really know, because there are hydrogen buses in London, for example. How long will it be before we have an infrastructure that allows hydrogen cars? We just don't know. And most of these things are changing rapidly, and most of them are outside of our control. A really great one to think about is AI. So I have lots of conversations with people about AI. Everybody's talking about AI just now. And some people will say, do you know, this is what's going to happen. This is how AI is going to affect the world. I'm like, okay, interesting. And other people say, it's not going to affect me at all. It's not something that I'm going to engage with. It's not going to affect me. And I say the same thing to both sides of that. How do you know? We can't predict the future. Things are happening that we don't even know about. Things have already happened that are changing the system around us. We can't possibly know what's going to happen next week or next month. Certainly not in a year's time. You just don't know. And that's because we're living within complex adaptive systems. And as soon as one thing changes, it has a ripple effect across the rest of the system. And there's no way of knowing what that ripple effect is going to do. If you change one thing, it changes many other things. So going back to the 1920s, we had repeatable and predictable processes. I'm not trying to say that complexity didn't exist in the 1920s, but it was certainly less noticeable. The world wasn't as big as it is now. And nobody could have predicted the limitations of mass production back when it was so successful. But now, complexity is everywhere. We still have things with definitive outcomes. If I do this, then that will happen. But there's a lot of other elements that are no longer repeatable and predictable. And it's those bits that we need to take a new approach on. So as Burns was changing over the years, so were many other car companies. Consumers started to have choices. Cars weren't just mechanical anymore. There was comfort options, entertainment options. There was a lot of electronics going in and software going in. And if you think about now, we even have autonomous vehicles. And in Edinburgh, they have driverless buses, which is terrifying if you ask me. The manufacturers themselves now have more choices, and that's not new. In the 1970s, Japanese car manufacturers redefined the relationship between cost and quality. Cost used to mean quality, and they managed to create a system that meant that low cost also equaled quality, and they had huge success with that. So supply chains, yes, part of the system. getting much more accessible for people to have a lot more choices. But then you've got other choices that car manufacturers or anybody can make. Marketing decisions. We've all seen ad campaigns that completely change the consumer market. From one advert, it completely changes the consumer market. And it's, again, not just our products. We are all creating products, whether that's a virtual product or whether that's a physical product. Most of us will be doing that in some way, shape, or form. But that product is part of a service. And services are everything now. Consumers want instant feedback. They want instant attention. And if you don't give that to them, somebody else will. So it's so much bigger than your small piece in the process. There's so many variables. Not much is repeatable and predictable. Whatever product you're working on now, will it be successful? No idea. Nobody can tell you if your product is going to be successful. Again, it's simply not that simple. Humans are unpredictable. Humans now have access to a lot more stuff than they did before, and that means that we need to change. But there's a problem with that too. And I want to talk about mindset, because I often hear people say, we just need to have an agile mindset, or we just need to have a growth mindset. And I hear and see people blame others for failing to change and failing to accept change. But I think, again, it's simply not that simple. It's not fair. We can't keep blaming individuals for their inability to change. And I think it's not really anyone's fault. We've grown up around certain styles of management that are suited for certainty. And it's instinctive that we fall into those habits of using those styles. We start to give instructions. We start to tell people what to do. We start trying to control the outcomes. And all of those things are perfectly well suited to situations where there is a definitive answer. When there is a, if I do this, then that will happen. But we do, however, need a new tool, because we're not listening to the system when we try to control those other things that can't be predicted. And we try to search for certainty where there is very little. And that's where I think leadership comes in. So I want to ask you now, and I'm going to ask you to use the raise hand function in Zoom, if you know how to do that. It should be, I can't even remember where it is in Zoom. Marco, can you help me? Where will people get that?
They will get that on the bottom. There's a whole load of icons, and there's a hand actually there that says raise hand.
Okay.
If your screen is not very wide, it will be in the ... of the other items that are normally on that. So if you can raise your hand, when I click on it, I'll raise my hand like that. It comes up here.
Okay. Lovely.
Okay,
so raise your hand now with those instructions if you consider yourself to be a leader.
Okay, so lots of hands going up. Oh,
Excellent.
I've got, I'm trying to count. 12, 13.
Yeah.
13 out of 35. 14.
Okay.
So we're nearing on the halfway mark.
Okay.
Wow.
Lovely. Thank you for that. You can pop your hands down now. Thank you for participating. So I asked that question because I always find it really interesting, the number of people that actually put their hands up. The number of people who don't believe that they are leaders. I'm going to share this quote with you. It's one of my favorites. A leader is someone who influences others to take effective action. That means anyone in this virtual room, any of your peers, any of your managers, any of your team members, literally anyone is a leader if they influence others to take effective action. So from my point of view, every single person on this call has taken time out of their day to come and listen to a Scottish woman talk about some stuff. And I think that all of you, because you're doing that, are leaders, because you will have the passion inside you to influence others to take effective action. And some people think, I need to be a manager to be a leader, or I need to have the answers to be a leader. But I think that leaders simply shouldn't even have the answers unless something is repeatable and predictable and has a definitive answer. Because the reality is that there are no answers. And that's because it's simply not that simple. It's the last time I'm going to say that for a while.
We have a question
Yes, Mark.
already, Valerie. What is
course,
effective? What is effective action from Mike?
Effective action. Okay. So for me, can I go back? Yeah, there we go. So effective action. I mean, I guess you have to think, what does the word effective mean? So to me, that means helping you achieve whatever goal it is that you're trying to achieve in some way or another. That's what effective means to me. And then action is actually doing something. So you're not telling somebody that they need to go and do the goal. You're influencing them towards doing something that is actually helping you to achieve your goal. Does that answer your question?
Mike, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it was a rhetorical question, but yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
I'd love your thoughts. That means if you'd like to tell the group. You don't have to, no obligation.
No, it's yeah, effective might different people's perspectives, I guess. So some people's effectiveness might be someone else's hindrance.
Yeah.
That would be less effective.
Yeah, that comes down to a conversation, I guess. What's best for the greater good? I mean, the world is full of paradox, right? So how do we harness that to be effective? So I'm going to get onto that. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, I have a couple of hands up, and I don't know if they have questions or whether it was part of our activity just a couple of minutes ago. If you have your hand up, you can actually put it down. If you have a question, please add it to the chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Marco. Keeping me right tonight. Well, it's nighttime here. Okay, where were we? I'm going to go back to the story now. And at this point, I'm going to talk you through some other characters in the story. They're going to go through a challenge together. And I'm going to introduce you to the model. Each area of the model has a set of tools and a set of reflective questions. I am going to give you a lot of information. All of that information is available on my website, which I will give you a link to. And there's much more available on my website. So you will get the link to that and you'll be able to digest that at your leisure. But I'd like you to be present with me just now and just take in as much as you can. Pop your questions into the chat. I love talking about this stuff. I'm going to try and keep it as brief as I can, but there's a lot to get through. So I'd like you to meet Henry. Henry works for Burns. He has been working at Burns for 15 years, and he's been given an enviable job of leading Electric Car Take 2 project. Lucky Henry. Henry's not alone though, he's got a mentor. Her name is Mel, and she's going to help him through the challenges ahead. Mel is a fabulous woman. She just happens to have read all the same books, watched all the same videos, and listened to all the same podcasts as I have. This is probably not a complete list of references, but the list is also on the website. So everything that has gone into this and more is on that list and is available to you on the website. Okay, so Henry's chatting with Mel. And he shares with Mel that he's been given this project, and to be honest, he feels absolutely terrified. And Mel says to him, well, why are you feeling terrified? He says, I don't know where to start. I know we need to do something differently, but I only know what I've been exposed to at Burns for the last 15 years. And that is, things have been led from the top, decisions have been made on his seniority level, and instructions have been given to those below. And Henry's been told he's going to have autonomy for this project. Oh, that's scary. he says to Mel, I don't have the answers. How can I have autonomy? I'm not sure about that. And Mel asks him what that might be like. And he says, I don't know, that feels weird. It feels uncomfortable. I'm not sure what that might be like. So Mel uses a great coaching tool. She asks him to draw it. And this is what he draws. He says, it feels a bit like this. On the inside, I'm terrified. I'm being pulled in multiple directions and I don't know what to do. On the outside, I think I'm a bit spiky. I'm desperately clinging on to anything stable. I'm trying to find something that will keep me safe. And Mel says, oh, that's your Bruno. Now, anyone who knows about Encanto knows that we don't talk about Bruno. Some people don't get that. So now I'm being explicit that this is an Encanto reference. But I think that it's really interesting because as much as it makes a great story, Bruno in the film is completely misunderstood. And I'm going to show you how our Brunos are all misunderstood too. So maybe we should talk about Bruno. Bruno is a part of Henry. It's his defense mechanism. It makes him feel and want to do things that don't make sense, but it's there to protect him from scary things like uncertainty and unpredictability. And Bruno comes out when your brain senses a threat. And Dr. Dan Siegel calls this flipping your lid. Some of you may have seen this before. He's got a hand-brain model, which helps you to understand this. And basically, when your brain senses a threat, you flip your lid. And it means that your brain doesn't work in the way that it normally would in a calm state. There's a link to a video there. You can go and have a absorb of that if you want to. You may have also heard the chimp paradox. It's a very similar thing. You might also have heard the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn responses to things that are happening around you. It's a very similar thing to that as well. I call it Bruno, but there's a whole lot of research behind it. And that video from Dr. Dan Siegel is good for helping you understand it a little bit more. And if you want to know more, you can ask me at the end and we can go into it in a bit more depth. So when we flip our lids, that's when our Brunos come out and we're able to draw these Brunos and understand them. What we need to do is notice Bruno, feel Bruno, sit with Bruno, accept Bruno, and treat Bruno with kindness, because it's not Henry's fault that Bruno is there and making him do these things. Everyone unconsciously has this safety mechanism, and every single one of them is different. This green one is Mel's, or this is my Bruno. Completely different, you can see from what Henry has drawn. And every time I do this with a group of people, we end up with all sorts of drawings all over the room. Everybody feels different inside when they flip their lids, and everyone looks different from the outside when their Brunos are around. Everybody needs something different to help bring their brain from this state when the Bruno is around to this state. There's nothing we can do about it. The worst thing we can do is try and stifle it. We need to accept it. We need to work with it. And we need to move beyond the things that they're trying to make us do. So when Mel's talking to Henry about this, she says, I think agility could be your superpower in helping you and Bruno work together and get through the challenges that are ahead. So Mel thinks that agility and leadership is this: taking short, fast action, changing plans based on what we know now, creating hypotheses about what we might learn next, celebrating anything we find out, good or bad, and having empathy and kindness towards others. She thinks it's central to everything and could be Henry and Bruno's superpower to get through the challenges ahead. She also suggests to him that he could use the McLean loop of leadership agility. It's a tool for individuals, and it's a tool to guide people towards a more comfortable and open feeling when they're dealing with uncertainty. It gives them practical and personal tools for better outcomes, but it's not going to be easy. None of this is easy. And we're going to see Bruno quite a lot in the rest of this story. Oh, there he is. So this is the loop. As I said, I'm going to talk you through each of the areas because Henry and Mel are going to go through each of these areas. This is a brand new version of the loop. The word evolve wasn't there this time last week. It said close. And when we get to talking about that, I'll explain why it has changed. But it's based on feedback that people have given me over the past little while. So any feedback that you have on this, rest assured, I take it all in and I make changes where I think it's necessary. Okay. So Henry and Mel are starting at consider because Henry's starting at the beginning. And consider is about figuring out what you already know and deciding whether you need to continue the loop. Where are we now? And some tools that you could use in this area of the loop include some of these things. So visualization. Visualization of anything always helps, but a system visualization might be particularly useful. Looking at any data that's available, knowns and unknowns, case studies, etc. There are more tools on the website. And some questions. Now, each stage of the loop has a set of questions, and those are about awareness. Those are about checking out how you feel. They might trigger your Bruno, or they might help the calm to return if your Bruno is around. So some of the questions here are thinking about, how is the problem being solved now? Is it being solved? Is somebody trying to solve it somewhere else? Because maybe we need to pay attention to that. Are there any things that we can predict? Because as we know, we need to take a different approach for those things. What assumptions am I making? So checking in on yourself at each stage. So Henry goes into the consider stage and starts to find out what they know. And he finds information using some of the tools. The questions give him some gaps. But he's already getting pressure for answers. He's getting people imposing solutions on him. There's somebody looking over his shoulder, questioning everything that he's doing. And it's the same person who told him that he would have autonomy to do this project. And he's feeling a little bit stifled. And when he talks to Mel about this, she says, well, that's your Bruno being triggered because of this kind of micromanagement that's happening to you. But the person who's doing that to you, they've also got a Bruno, and that'll be their Bruno doing that to you. They've told you that you need to take a different approach. That's quite uncomfortable for them. So you not only need to treat yourself with acceptance and kindness, you also need to treat them with acceptance and kindness because they've got things going on in their brain that they can't control as well. But she says to him, do you think that you have solutions already? Do you think that you have predictable and repeatable steps that will give you a predictable outcome? If you do, we find the best and most efficient process for those things, and we can leave the loop to the side. We don't need it. But if not, we will move into curiosity. So that's exactly what they did. So curiosity is about learning about those unknowns and filling the gaps that you found in the consider phase. And Mel asks Henry, what do you think curiosity means? And he says, I think it's about asking questions. However, I don't really like asking questions because I think I'm seen as a troublemaker and people think that I don't really know what I'm doing. So I don't really like doing that. So I'm not really sure about this one. And Mel says, that's totally understandable because in our society and in our culture, we're rewarded for asserting our views and providing answers quickly. So it's completely countercultural to be curious. It's not something that we're encouraged to do. However, it's so important because it gives us freedom from judgment, it gives us freedom from speculation, and it gives us freedom from assumption. If we ask the right questions in the right way, we can free ourselves from all of those things that hold us back. So Henry says, all right, okay, I'll try my best. Let's give it a go. Oh, and there's Bruno again as well, of course. This is tough. So some tools to use in the curiosity phase might be user research tools. I've worked with some amazing user researchers. They just blow my mind the way that they can get the information that we need to be successful out of people. Some of the tools they've got are fantastic. All the maps. Everybody loves a map these days. Stakeholder maps, empathy maps, customer journey maps, all of these things can help you to organize the things that you're finding out and make sense of them and generate insights from them. And service blueprints can also be super useful in helping you identify those pain points and figure out what it is that you need to do. Questions to ask yourself in this phase. So curiosity is about making sure that you are in fact hearing all the voices. So who might know something about this that I don't? And have I given those around me license to be curious too? It's all very well me asking questions, but does everybody else feel comfortable and know that it's okay for them to come across as a troublemaker or seem incompetent at their role? Are they all comfortable with doing that? And then thinking about yourself. So how can you be open? How can I be open to alternative views? And what biases have I got? And thinking about your own motivation can help you to stay curious and free yourself from those judgments, speculations, and assumptions that we all make every day. Human nature, but we need to be aware of it. So Henry goes into curiosity phase with some of his colleagues. They make a list of all the unrepresented voices that they can think of, and they approach each of those people with curiosity and anticipation. And all of those people that they talk to absolutely love being asked some of their thoughts and opinions. But the results for Henry and his team are confusing. They thought that they knew what they were going to hear, but it turns out that everybody has different needs and wants, and they all contradict each other. They don't even know whether electricity is the right thing for Burns to be looking at for a new car. He feels like he's losing control. He's under pressure to just do it. He's under pressure to make detailed plans and just go. But he knows that he couldn't, because he knows too much. And he knows that if he did that now, they wouldn't be able to create a detailed plan in good conscience. And he starts micromanaging, and he doesn't like that. And he feels confused, and he just wants to get off the ride and pretend that none of this ever happened. He never opened the Pandora's box or the can of worms or whatever metaphor you want to use that he has now opened. So what's going on here? Bruno's come out to play. Bruno is making him feel like he's losing control, making him want to build detailed plans, making him feel as though he needs to micromanage and making him want to just pick a way forward and go for it. But Bruno's just trying to give him comfort. He's doing a lot of things that are new to him, and Bruno's just trying to say, it's okay. There's safety here. You just need to micromanage, or you just need to do the things that you've always done before. But Henry now has the awareness to know that that's not rational. That's not the right thing to be doing. So he goes to Mel for some help. And she says, let me piece this together for you. Your brain now needs to unlearn. So it needs to figure out what's not working anymore and discard those things and let them go and make space for something new. Now, if this wasn't already hard enough, learning is tough, but unlearning is harder. Because we get trapped in believing the things that helped us yesterday will also help us today, and our brains need certainty. That's where they feel safe. But the more you notice what isn't serving you anymore and let it go, the better you get at it and the easier it gets. And again, it's about awareness, recognition, and acceptance. So Henry's now trying to figure out in his head what he needs to unlearn. Because then he's done the curiosity thing, he's gathered all of that information, he's making some sense of it, but what to do with it. And that's to move into the connect phase of this loop. And connect is about bringing people together, empowering them, giving them a license to lead, giving them the tools to unlearn too, if they need to. It's about quick, short, fast action, simple, safe experimentation. But of course, Bruno will be around in this space too. And we need to remember to acknowledge and notice that. And Henry has an obligation to his team to make sure that they feel comfortable with their Brunos too. Some tools to use here. I can wax lyrical about this stuff. I will keep myself in my box as much as I can, but I just love all of this. Psychological safety tools. I love it when we're able to create psychologically safe spaces. I feel like psychological safety is becoming a buzzword, and I hear people go, oh, it's a safe space, and then they just start to slag off one of their colleagues. And I'm like, that's not safety. And I feel like we're really losing what psychological safety actually is. So how can we create spaces where people feel like they can truly be themselves and they can truly interact and they can truly contribute without any fear of humiliation or any fear of anything? They feel safe in being who they are. How can we do that? There's so many tools out there. I love the work of Amy Edmondson. Her book Teaming gave me this tool, Superordinate Goals, which I always put in this talk, and it's led me to some amazing conversations. A superordinate goal is something which is more important than anybody's agenda. So it's so important that you can't have somebody telling you that, well, my way is better than your way because I know more about X than you. It brings it up a level. It means that people cannot use that. They are in a completely neutral space. And when I talk about superordinate goals, some people have come over to me and they've said, I didn't know it was called that, but we had a superordinate goal. And a lot of the times when I'm hearing these stories, it's about COVID. So in the first part of the pandemic, when there was chaos and there was a crisis and people had to change what they were doing, they had a superordinate goal. They had something that bound them all together that was more important than anything else. It's really hard to create that when there isn't a crisis and there isn't a bit of chaos. But if you can find a way to do it, it's a huge tool in helping us create psychological safety, because it shows that the leaders don't know the answers. So they start to be a little bit vulnerable. It allows people to make stupid suggestions and ask stupid questions because the goal is so huge. There are no right answers. People know that. And it starts to build a place that is more psychologically safe. Love it. Not going to say any more about it, but look it up. It's in the Teaming book by Amy Edmondson. That's where I found out about it, and I just love it. Continuous improvement tools. Now, we're at Scrum Masters of the Universe. I don't need to tell you too much about continuous improvement tools because I'm pretty sure that you're all pretty hot at helping teams not only look at what they're doing and making it better, but also how they're doing it and making it better. There's so many amazing tools out there, most of which you will probably know, and some of which you probably hear about on a regular basis at this meetup. So I'm not going to labour that point. But equal voice tools are another one of my favourites, and it kind of goes hand in hand with psychological safety. Equal voice is about making the people who have quieter voices louder, and making those that have louder and more dominant voices quieter, and equaling out that. How do you give people the opportunity, if they're not comfortable speaking, how do you give them the opportunity still to contribute in a psychologically safe way? My favourite tool for that is liberating structures. Some of you will have heard of and used liberating structures, one of my favourite toolkits in the world. I've got a lot of favourites. I realise I keep saying this is my favourite, but I run sessions on liberating structures and help people to make their spaces more psychologically safe and more equal in terms of voice. And I just love it. And then design thinking tools. I've worked with some amazing service designers, and the tools that they've brought to the table in their toolkit are just awesome for bringing people together, connecting them all towards a common purpose, a common opportunity, and finding ways forward together. Love all of those too. Okay, enough on that. The questions to ask yourself in the connect phase. So have I shown as a leader vulnerability and trust? That's the very first thing we need to think about. Have I framed the problem as an opportunity? If we frame stuff as problems, people start to blame. They start to blame, why have we got this problem? Oh, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. If you frame it as an opportunity, we start to look towards the future instead of at the past. So have I framed the problem as an opportunity? Created a space where agendas can be left at the door. That's where your superordinate goal can help. And are all the voices being heard? So Henry has a tough start with this. He knows that Bruno is around, he's feeling vulnerable, he doesn't trust his team, he's micromanaging his team, and yeah, he needs to realise that he needs to unlearn quite a lot of stuff. So he introduces his team to his Bruno, and they have a conversation about it. And they all talk about their own Brunos, and they all draw their own Brunos, and they learn a little bit more about what they're noticing from their colleagues and how to interact with each other in a more productive way. And then things start to happen. He uses some connection and equal voice tools, and slowly they start to connect with one another, and they start to become what we might call a team rather than a group of people. They also had a superordinate goal. Allow our vehicles of the future to be fit for these unprecedented times. And they started to work even better together. They started to produce results. They would regularly discuss the problems, the results, they would improve their working together. It was agility in action as we'd like to see it. They did short, fast experiments, they learned loads, they had loads of failures, but they let the frustration settle and they moved on. And they were really making progress. The only problem was that they were making progress with something that wasn't just a new car. They were realizing that they needed to create and change their whole system, the whole way that Burns worked, in order to be fit for these unprecedented times. So that gave them a few problems. Lissa Adkins says this: the only thing agility is guaranteed to deliver 100% of the time is impediments. If you're not coming up against impediments, you're not doing agility right. I 100% agree with that, but this was no exception. So some of the impediments they were coming up against was their software delivery being too slow, or the policies being unsuitable, or budget structures being in the way, or not having the expertise that they need. And of course, it's not just the car. So at this point, Bruno's out again. Henry is used to working within the blockers that the company puts in his way. And I think a lot of us are. We're not used to trying to change them. So this is scary stuff. But Henry knows that if he doesn't do something about it, it could derail the whole thing. He doesn't really know what to do, though. So Mel reminds him that impediments are not in the path. Impediments are the path. So wherever you see a blocker, that's where you need to go next. And Henry's like just feeling a bit forlorn. And Mel says to him, okay, you've unlearned a lot. It's time to relearn. You need to try some new things, learn some new things, and that will give you new perspectives for old problems. You can reach out to the other parts of the organization, to your managers. You might have to ask them to think about changing too. They will have Brunos as well, but they might not have been on this journey of awareness that you have been on. So again, you need to treat them with kindness, acceptance, awareness. And she thinks that Henry has the power to do this. He's not so sure, but she's pretty sure that he does. But this is what it takes. Now, this part of the loop used to be called close. And I used to say here, this is what it takes to close the loop. You have to break through those impediments to have real success. And I got a lot of people coming to me and saying, you don't close an infinity loop. And I was like, okay, I take your point. Maybe I could choose a different word. So I've chosen the word evolve. I've got the same content in there, but I hope it's a word that fits better. Please let me know what you think of this word in this spot, because it's the first time hot off the press. The website still says close. So this is new. This is like exclusive you've got here tonight. All right, what does evolve mean? Tools to use here. So impact assessments, imagination retreats. I heard about this at Service Design in Government when I was there this year. And the guy was talking about taking people out of their environment. In this case, it was some people that lived in a Black community in central London, and they were just surrounded by buildings and concrete. And he took them to the countryside, and they spent a few days together in the countryside and started to reimagine what their community could be like. I thought it was amazing. Taking people out of their normal environment can really inspire some things. You could use the McLean Loop of Leadership Agility at this point. You could use a kata, or you could use change mapping. All great tools to think about how we systemically move things forwards. Questions to ask yourself here. Where are the blockers? Where should I be spending my time? And what conversations do I now need to have? But also, is the problem I'm trying to solve still the right one to be solving? Because you might be going completely down the wrong path. You need to recognize that. So Henry's climbing up through Evolve. And he's having to ask other teams to unlearn in order to relearn. He's showing them the loop. Some of them care, some of them don't. But the loop is for all levels, all individuals who influence others to take effective action. And it doesn't mean at this stage that we need to have swathes and swathes and swathes of changes. It could just be one small change that helps you to evolve something that moves it closer to something that you can consider, something that's different. Sometimes it's not even removing things. Maybe it's a reimagining, a tweaking of a policy or a relationship, just enough to help you consider what's different now from what was before, the last time that you had a chance to consider. Maybe there's something that's more predictable and repeatable. Maybe you can take a more informed approach. Maybe you're solving the wrong problem. Wherever it brings you, that's okay. So Henry's team delivered a success. It wasn't just the car, it was the beginnings of a system that could completely change the way that Burns operates as an organisation. They worked together with the management and they helped each other to achieve their goals, but they brought in other teams too. And they started all working in this way where they were removing impediments for each other. It wasn't just Henry's team and the management or another team and the management. It was a whole ecosystem of people slowly trying to make it better. It's not perfect, but they're creating a culture of empathy, curiosity, and connection. Now that's the end of Henry's story. I'm going to come back to the loop just to show you it once more. It's multi-level, it's meta, but I think it's what we need in these complex times. I've told a story about Henry using it potentially on a big project, but it can help us with small problems and big problems. You don't need to start at consider. You could be sitting at home or in the office just now thinking, do you know, I think I'm in Connect right now. Maybe I need to try some of those tools. It's meant as a guide. It's not meant to be some sort of process. It's just to help you, nudge you, make you aware of some things that might help. And it's helped me tremendously. Creating it has helped me tremendously. I've had some great conversations, some great insights from other people. That has all helped me find patterns, challenge my own experiences, and make the loop even better. It'll probably never be complete. And the loop itself has helped me take stock, check in, notice what's going on around me, and make sense of what's going on around me. Yeah, I use it when I'm making workshops. I use it when I'm thinking about a sticky situation. I use it at home. I use it at work. I mean, I made it, so it's in my brain all of the time, but it does really help. And I can see where people are in my job as well as a coach, where they might need to go next. I can help to guide them towards some of the things that are here. But what I've realised is that we live in unprecedented times, and that's not going to slow down. It can take years to get rid of controlling bureaucracy, and we're never done improving, but we are still humans. So I would invite you to go and figure out your Bruno. And I would invite you to ask your team to figure out their Brunos and share it with each other. It's one of the single most effective activities that I've done with every team that I do it with. And then treat those Brunos with awareness, acceptance, reflection, and kindness, because it's nobody's fault. It's just simply not that simple anymore. And that for me is all I have to say. You can contact me on LinkedIn. My email address is also there. I can come to your meetup. I can come to your organization. I can come to your community. But yeah, if you have any questions, I'll take those now. If you want to do some activities and want to explore Bruno a bit more, can do that too. I hope you enjoyed listening. Link to their website is there too.
Valerie, thank you so much. So everybody, if you can actually add your questions into the chat. I have a question. What kind of activity are you actually thinking about whilst people are actually thinking of their questions?
When you say activity, what that we could do now?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay, so sometimes when I do this with clients, like I have a bit of time, so I will get everybody in the room to think. I'll talk to them a little bit more about hand-brain model, which we can do, and then I get everybody in the room to draw the Bruno, and then I get them all to talk about their Brunos, and then we just have a little bit of understanding that about ourselves and about others. So that's one thing we could do. Or we could do some sort of looking at the loop and trying to figure out where you might be so that you can try and take something away that's tangible for tomorrow that you might be able to use the loop for. So that's the kind of things we can do if anybody wanted to. We've got a little bit of time, I think.
Yeah, everybody is sharing their appreciation for this conversation.
Oh, thank you.
This talk. Love the story you shared here. People are going to reach out to you to link in. Awesome presentation, great session. Thank you. Some people need to drop. I haven't seen any questions apart from what we asked earlier. There was one question. Maybe you can answer that, because some people gave some ideas. Any creative and tactful techniques for lowering the dominant voices to enhance the equality? What's your view on that?
All right, so liberating structures is my favorite for this, as I mentioned. If you don't know liberating structures, it's a toolkit of facilitation techniques, basically. And there's I think there's about 30 something. There are some unofficial ones and some official ones. But each of them is created to make equal voice in a room or in a group or in a meeting. One of the things that it does the most is, I would say, like small conversations. So getting people into 2s and 3s to have conversations, that can help to make sure that you've got everybody gets a chance to speak because they're speaking to one other person. But it can also ensure that the person who normally dominates the conversation can't, because everybody's talking to each other at the same time. There's a great one called 1, 2, 4 all, which you'll probably all be aware of. And if you didn't know it was called 1, 2, 4 all, then here's a newsflash for you. But that's basically where you give people some reflection time. And that's another great tool for equaling the voices, because a lot of times you hear people say, I couldn't answer that question right now. And you're throwing me into a breakout room to answer a question and I've not even had a chance to think. So 1, 2, 4 all is the first bit, is time to think. So it's 1 or 2 minutes that you give people, you've set them a question or a challenge or something to think about, and you give them time to think. And I love that, because we never give people time to think. We never give ourselves permission to stop and think. So I love that. And then you put people into 2s. So then once they've thought of something, they've got a chance to talk with somebody else, then into 4s. So even if you only speak once to that person that you're in a pair with, the idea is that your contribution will get carried forward into the 4, and eventually you do the all part, and then the 4 will carry your contribution into the main group. And it just neutralizes things. But the whole toolkit is full of stuff like that.
Yeah, the 1, 2, 4 all. I like the way that you actually framed that about what having 2 people together, and that means there's a conversation just between 2. That creates that safety. And
Yeah.
with practice of doing that repeatedly on various activities, those people actually might step up a little bit more later on in the 4s and in the all, because they're kind of like going out of their comfort zone, and they're stretching, and they see that it's okay to stretch. So I love that. Suruchi, that was your question. Is everything good with you?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. We have another question already, Valerie. I hope you've got some time for
Yeah.
some questions. Taz actually asks us, how would you respond if you ask someone to share what their Bruno is, and they say they don't have a Bruno?
Okay. So, I mean, this happens. This has happened to me many times. You sit in the you sit in a room with people, and you know that simply by bringing up this topic and talking about it, that you've already triggered their Bruno. This has happened to me on multiple occasions. What you need to do, again, it's about kindness and it's about acceptance. So if there's somebody there who doesn't want to take part, that's fine. You're free pass. It's okay. They will have a Bruno. They absolutely will have a Bruno. It's neuroscience stuff. I'm not a neuroscientist. Need to just tell you all, I am not. But there's enough evidence out there to show that this is something that we have, and we just need to be aware of it. If somebody's not ready to be aware of it, that's okay. It's okay. It's kindness and acceptance. That's the only way to deal with that. If they don't want to take part, they don't want to take part. It's okay.
Okay, and that would be applicable if they actually just don't know what a Bruno is?
Yeah, I mean, I would always start the exercise by explaining it, explaining the hand-brain model and talking about what that means and what that means. And I would always share my own Bruno ahead of asking anybody else to think about theirs. So again,
Yeah.
showing the vulnerability helps in these circumstances too.
Great. Showing your own Bruno to actually demonstrate and actually see if that actually resonates with them. That's great. Taz, I hope that's actually answered your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you, Valerie.
Okay,
Brilliant.
you're welcome.
Brilliant.
Happy to chat anytime.
Okay. If you want to raise your hands and ask a question directly, please do. Whilst you're doing that, before anybody sticks their hand up, so stick your hand up in Zoom if you want to come on the stage and ask your question directly. We had a question earlier, and it was actually Taz as well. Is this a trick question? Question mark.
Oh no, that's when when they were asking put our hands up if we see ourselves as leaders. I was just curious.
Right.
It was a trick question.
So was it a trick question, Valerie? What was that all about?
Well, do you feel like I tricked you because that wasn't my intention?
No, not at all. I was sort of being a little facetious, but because I was like, she's got something
No,
else
not a trick
in mind
question.
here. Should I really raise my hand? Yeah, so it's good.
Yeah.
It's all.
I'm just really curious to see how people view themselves, which is why I ask that question, because a lot of people, as I said, they feel like they have to be a manager, they have to have the answers, they have to have some sort of, like, I don't know, symbolic capital to be a leader. And, you know, that's just not true. So that's why I asked the question.
Okay, so I've got no hands up, Valerie. I think
Okay.
everything that you shared has just been just so amazing for everybody to actually take in. Simple. We have people looking forward to actually learning more about Dr. Dan Siegel's Hander model of the brain. You don't even need a title to be a leader. Yeah, so too right. You don't need a title. We've got 15 minutes left, if I'm right, Valerie, is that right?
Yeah. So we can explore Dan Siegel a little bit more if people are interested in it. I can share a little bit more, and we can do a little bit of drawing. And if you don't want to do that, you know, thanks for coming. Again, it's a free pass. If you don't want to get into this right now, then it's totally fine. You do not have to. But if people are showing willing, then it's something we could do.
Okay, well, like I say, I have no more questions. So first of all, we've got a few people dropping off. So I'd like to at least thank people before they drop off, if they're going to drop off. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. Remember, the recording is actually on YouTube. But you can stay if Valerie still has the time. And just let us know what would be valuable to you right now in the chat. Or just raise your hand, just come on stage. Don't be shy. We're here, we're kind. And we're kind to your Brunos as well. We'll have to have you come to Cisco and speak on this with our Agile community of practice. Taz is going to reach out to you, Valerie. Thank you, Taz.
Happy days. Happy to do that for you.
Thank you for this talk. It is amazing how it is evolving. I love that.
Yeah, it's a love for Evolve, because I'm quite interested in that, because Close didn't get much love. So does Evolve get some love?
Yeah, Magda actually mentioned that, so that's great. And Anna is saying yes. Anybody want to come on stage? You can unmute your microphones. I'll tell you what, I'll just get out of your way.
Oh, we've got a hand up now.
Yeah, I just want to speak up. Definitely Evolve sounds better than Close.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank
since
you.
Infinity Loop, and also it's a transition to consider, right? Was it first? Yeah, to consider what next after you relearn.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the feedback. I appreciate it. All right, I'll talk a little bit more about Bruno. If people are sticking around, then I'll do that. Okay, I'm going to share, I'll do a little bit about the hand-brain model. So we're going to do a bit of neuroscience. Again, thank you for coming. If you're not interested in this, please leave us. But if you are, then stick around. So we've got, if you can make your hand into the shape, so your thumb goes in into your palm and your fingers go over the top. Okay, when your brain is in a calm state, this is what it looks like according to Dr. Dan Siegel. So this is your spinal cord. This is your cortex in your brain. Inside here is your limbic system and your amygdala. And your amygdala is what controls a lot of what goes on in your brain. So when you're in a calm state, everything's nice and connected, everything's feeling nice and calm. And then when a threat comes into your environment, you flip your lid. And what that means is that your amygdala can't talk to your cortex anymore. So basically, you're not able to make the same kinds of decisions, the same kind of rational decisions that you would make when you're in a calm state of mind. There is some new neuroscience out there that suggests that some of this is not quite right, but there's enough that it's useful as a metaphor. So My Bruno is the little green chap here that you can see hopefully still on the screen share. We talked a little bit about Henry's Bruno. So Henry's Bruno is the spiky on the outside and messed up and stretched thin, but also holding on to anything that will keep him safe. And my Bruno is this little guy. So that's me sitting very, very small, feeling very, very small in the corner, backed in, nowhere to go. I'm stuck. And when I flip my lid, what happens to me is I feel like I'm not important and I feel like I've got nowhere to go. So that's how I, at the moment, it's changed a few times over the years, but at the moment, that's it. It's that backed into a wall, nowhere to go, feeling a little bit little and unimportant and yuck. And what I do on the outside, I don't look like that on the outside. What I do on the outside is that I fire lightning bolts at people. So I get quite snippy. And that's not a very nice Valerie. You don't want to see that Valerie. But what people don't realize is that when I'm in this state, when I flip my lid, what I need is someone to come and take me out of the corner. Someone to show me kindness, make me feel big again, make me feel like me again, and bring me out of the corner. I shared this with my husband, and I got him to draw his Bruno, which is actually, Henry's Bruno is based on my husband's, it's not the same. And we had a really lovely discussion about treating each other differently when we notice certain behaviors in each other. So now we have a new vocabulary and we have a new language when either of us are feeling like this. We can say Bruno or something to that effect. And we know, he knows now that I'm not being snippy because I'm being snippy. I just need to be brought out of the corner and made to feel big again. And I know some things about him that I didn't realize before, and it helps me to treat him with more kindness and more acceptance and give him what he needs at those times. So I've done this with teams, and immediately something's happened that's triggered my Bruno, and I've been able to say to them with that new language, my Bruno's here, can you help me out? And we're able to do that for each other. So this is the type of exercise that I do when I go to clients and talk about this. So if you're willing, we've still got 12 people on the call, so we may get a few Brunos here. If you're willing, take a piece of paper, a Post-it and a pen and draw your Bruno. And think about how it feels on the inside, how it presents to others, and what it needs to feel acceptance. I'll give you some time to do that. Normally we would share with one other person in the kind of 1-2 sort of safe way. We don't need to do that. There's only 12 of us. You don't need to share at all. But if anyone does feel like sharing once they've done this, then you totally can with the group, but there's no obligation to do it. It's just nice. I'm going to give you the permission now to take care of yourself, think about yourself, and maybe recognize some things about yourself that you didn't already know. So Ruchi, hand up.
Yes, I have a generic question, Valerie. How to handle the situation if two people have same types of Bruno, okay? And they may show up their Bruno behaviors simultaneously. Then any advice on how to deal with that? And they both have to work together. I mean, there is no way.
Yeah. It's very unlikely that two people have exactly the same Bruno, but what I would be asking them to do is when they're like this and not when they're like that, have this conversation and bring it to awareness. Because if you're not aware of yourself and others, then it's a losing battle. So part of it is just making people aware, making yourself aware of what you're like, but also understanding other people, because then their behaviors will start to change. You won't need to do anything because they'll know and they'll start to go, oh, hang on, when I'm feeling that way and they're feeling that way, that's not a good thing. Maybe we need to, and they'll work it out. She says. But yeah, in my experience, it completely changes the way that people view each other by doing this.
We have a
So
question
take some
in the...
time. Oh, we have a question. Okay. Yes.
Oh, sorry. Is that good for you, Suruchi? Okay, I got
I
a
was on
nod.
mute. I'm good.
Okay, we have a
Thank
question
you,
in the
Valerie.
chat. Valerie. Is Bruno related to inner critic? This question is from Sarah.
Oh, Sarah, I am not sure. When I've talked to people about this before, I've had some people say, oh yeah, I've got someone that sits on my shoulder. I'm not sure of inner critic myself, but when I talk to them about it, they say, oh, I've got someone who sits on my shoulder and tells me things as well. They're called Giovanni or whatever it might be. So I presume that it might be similar, but I'm specifically talking about that flipped lid, but it might be similar. The chimp paradox is similar as well, so there might be some similarities there. I'm not sure.
Okay. I hope that answers your question, Sarah. Although, yeah, inner critic, not sure that it's related.
Not sure.
I don't know.
Look
How
it
would I say what I actually learned from that is that Bruno is something that represents me and represents me of how I see myself. Does that sound something like what you were thinking, Valerie?
So for me, Bruno is the thing that happens to our brains when we sense a threat. So it's not necessarily just someone sitting on our shoulder. It's really about the threat thing. So when we it's a safety blanket, it's a safety mechanism, a comfort feature of our brains. So it's really about when you sense that threat, what is it that triggers? So it can help to think about your triggers as well, when you're doing this, so that you can visualize what that manifests as. And some people have multiple Brunos. Different triggers give them different Brunos as well.
That's interesting.
So yeah.
I certainly like the idea that it's actually evolved around a trigger. So if we're not triggered, then maybe that Bruno is not showing up. And so it's basically about those triggers. If Bruno shows up, actually noticing kindness, acceptance, and then like acknowledging the existence of that Bruno, and then working with actually how to actually help that Bruno.
Yeah. It's part of you. It's, it's just it's there all the time, but it's only when you feel the threat that it triggers it. So
yeah, thank you, Sarah.
We've got a couple of minutes.
Sarah, thanks you for your answer. Sorry, we got a little bit of a decal on the time. We're talking at the same time. I'm hearing you afterwards, and but yeah, Sarah says thanks for your answer and your inspiring talk. You actually invited everybody. We have a couple of minutes left. We invited everybody to actually do a little drawing. Has anybody done a drawing that they can show us and would like to actually talk about their drawing? Yay, Taz.
You've got lots of loves.
Yeah, you can see the hearts get, for me, I dissipate the threat by, starting with assuming good intent always. So I really rarely feel like threatened, to be honest, by many things. And by people, by things. Yeah. So for me, it's just the hearts get bigger. I think you need much more empathy, much more of that to come into flight than to, be ravenous or be enraged. But, some people do test those things, right? They will test it sometimes, but I keep my hearts getting bigger and bigger for me. So
nice. I love that. I've never seen one like that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a second.
We have another one.
Anna's got another one, although it's a little bit blurred.
Yeah, you might have to turn off your virtual background there. Can't see.
And we've only got 30 seconds left. Maybe a minute.
And to see it.
Anna,
Oh, she's gone. Oh,
Oh,
she's
there we go.
back.
there you go.
There we
She
go.
back.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Oh, it looks like
That's a
something
little
out of the Lord of the
scary.
Rings.
that's scary.
Oh, no, that's
Wow.
beautiful.
Yeah, it was good drawing actually. It looks like a big old tree branch or something, like with like a real life, yeah, evil tree or something. It's fascinating. It's fascinating.
What does that feel like now?
I know we don't have any more time, so we can't dig into that, but yeah, great drawing.
Just a quick word from Anna, maybe. What does that feel like, that drawing?
That's interesting to try to visualize that. But I also recognize that it's hard to connect with my Bruno when I feel calm.
Yeah.
It's like
Next time,
it's even
next
like
time you're up, you'll notice.
I forget. I forget how he looks like.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Anna, for that. And thank you, Taz, for sharing your drawing. Valerie,
Sure.
thank you so much. Really, thank you so much for this meetup and actually joining us. And we peaked out at 35 people, which was great. Well done. Thank you, everybody, for coming to join us. That was amazing. You are amazing. Okay. And your Brunos are amazing. And coming back to Valerie, thank you.
Thank you,
so
Valerie.
much.
Oh, thank you
you
for
very
having me, and thank
much.
you for sticking
Thank you,
around,
Valerie.
those who did, and
Take care,
engaging.
all. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, you too.